Welcome back to another video report, folks, and as you're staring at my ugly mug, that is a wee hint that these are games, or one game as it turned out, that I recorded at our monthly meet-up at Marionville Models. Now, I've called this video It Takes Two, and the reason for that will become apparent, but it's basically going to be my commentary on the games and trends that I'm seeing, especially in German players. So I was playing Soviets yesterday from Fortress Europe, so there's not a lot of thrills in terms of available units in Fortress Europe. It's all fairly vanilla kind of stuff, but I still had to put a list together out of it. I wanted to try the Soviets. I've been doing some painting, and it's time for me to get them up to the same level of options that I've got for my German forces. So before we talk a bit more about the event and the games, let's have a wee look at the list that I was using to give you an idea of what it was and how useful it was or wasn't. So I had two formations. This is not the entire list, it's just a wee example for you. There was T-34s with some T-70s and infantry. Now, they were all heroes for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't want big, massive, enormous chunks of infantry to move around. When it came to the tanks, though, for instance, this is the kind of platoons I was using, 285s and 276s. Now, for the same, I was using 3 platoons of them plus an 85 as a company command. And for the same points, you could get the same number and the same combinations of ordinary Soviet tanks or T-34s. These were heroes, the other ones are ordinary ones. Now, they're the same points, so you get the same number. The difference is that these guys here have ordinary kind of motivation. They're 4 up, the last stand's 4 up, but the skill check is 3 up, which can be quite handy in assaults. And you get them in platoons of 4, whereas the ordinary units, you get them in platoons of up to 10. In this case, I was looking at platoons of 6, and they have a motivation of 3 up and a last stand of 3 up. So you can see there's more of them, they can take more punishment and stick around longer, but you know, if you're having to roll a last stand, you've pretty much lost a unit already, you know, because it's only going to be 1 tank left. So I looked at those 2 options and I decided to go for the heroes, first of all because of that 3 up skill check for assaults, and also I could have them in 3 platoons instead of 2, so I could be in different places on the table at different times as is needed. These guys here, I'm in the middle of painting them just now. I borrowed some tanks for yesterday, but that was the 2 choices I had and why I chose to go for the heroes. Now, in the games themselves, they didn't do very much, but I'll cover that off when I talk about the games and how range seemed to have an effect on how the local guys are playing. I also had 5 T-70s, very good unit at just 5 points, just ordinary right across the board in terms of motivation and skill. But in the first game, these came in and actually delivered the killer blow, and in the second game, these kept me in the game. Though I didn't use them the way I really should have, in the end they kept me in the game and prevented it from becoming a victory for the defenders. So in the infantry, I took 2 platoons of 10 plus Commissar hero infantry. I don't think they were they're the Strelkovy, just the ordinary ones. It's a decent size but not too big, and I got a 3 up skill check, which is always handy. So there's 2 platoons of them plus a company command. I also boosted them with a couple of heavy machine guns in the second game, that to put them up to 104 points, but you'll see why I needed 104 points when we talk about that game. And in terms of support for them, I had, these are actually core units, but there's the 120mm mortars and the medium mortars, and then formation support for 57mm. Now I expected these guys to be punishing with a 3-up firepower. Reroll misses, then your opponent's got to reroll saves, and you've got a 3-up firepower. And you know what? That should have been really good, but they couldn't roll above a 2 for the... I think they made 1 firepower across the 2 games, which was a bit ridiculous. But I still really rate them, and I will be keeping them in any kind of Soviet infantry list that I've got, because I think a 3-up firepower with a reroll of misses is, really, really, really strong. These medium mortars actually did much, much more damage. They have only got the 4-up firepower, but they rolled 4-ups. They were quite happy to do that, though they did have a bit of bother ranging in. I was getting dice rage during both games, to be honest. We've all been there, but things just didn't want to... The dice just didn't want to do the thing. See, in here there's some good dice and some bad dice, and I pulled the bad dice out every time. But once again, a good unit. See, between these 2 units here, it's only 10 points. And that's a lot of powerful artillery. These guys, they did nothing in the 2 games, really. They shot up a couple of half-tracks. That was about it. But because of the range of 28 inches, as we'll see in my discussions later, they just the Germans felt obliged to stay at long range when they were shooting and stay out of range of them, which actually worked in my favour. But in defence, I'd imagine they'd be really good in an ambush, because that'd be 8 shots at anti-tank 11. I mean, they're nearly as good as a Pak 40, so they're getting close to that magic point, anti-tank 12 against medium tanks. So I'll definitely be taking these in every list that I can. They don't have the rate of fire of 3 that they used to have in version 3, but that was far too much anyway. But there you go, guys. It was 3 platoons of 4 T-34s, platoon of 5 T-70s, 2 platoons of 10 infantry, the 2 mortar platoons, and the anti-tank gun platoons. So, it takes 2. That's the theme of these battle reports, as you'll see. And the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of people seem to forget, when they're defending, that it's not just about sitting on the objective. They have to get up and potentially counter-attack. And you'll see in the second game, you're only going to see 1 game, right? Unfortunately, I totally screwed up the recording on the first game. It was a really, really interesting game as well. If you could survive my huffing and puffing over my dice. But in the second game, you'll see that the German players just sat tight the whole time, and they sat tight and they sat tight. And it was only towards the end of the game when I'm telling them, you really need to do something about this, or it's just going to be a draw. That would have opened the door to potentially let me get in at them. But what are you going to do? You're going to try and push for the draw, or just accept the draw or push for the win, right? And they had opportunities to push for the win, but they didn't take it. Partly because of one of the most important factors that affected the first game. Now, the first game I was up against Panthers and Panzer IVs, who have got a range of 40 inches and 32 inches respectively, and we were playing Armoured Fury. Now, nominally you have an attacker and defender in that game, but whilst the defender might start off the game under pressure, they've still got to take an objective themselves, and that, once again, the German player, that didn't enter their mind. Take an objective? No, I've got big guns, I sit and shoot at T-34s who are only trained. Because of that range advantage as well, he continually held back and just stayed out of my range. Now, I didn't intend to win that game with my T-34s. They were ready to outflank him if he attacked me, or if he pulled away from the position he was holding, I was ready to shoot off towards the objective at the end of the table to try and take that. But I was planning to win it with my infantry, but it took me forever to kill 3 Nebs. I mean, I failed, I think, 5 or 6 3-up firepower tests against his Nebs. But when I did kill them, I moved in, and very, very, one turn basically, I was able to win the game because he insisted on keeping his tanks as far away from me as possible, with no consideration for objectives. So you have to get stuck in. You might have a 16-inch advantage in range over a T-34 76, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that's no advantage to you, because the battle is going to take place right on the objective, you know. It's going to be taking or holding objectives. It's not about just killing tanks. I actually spent the vast majority of that game with my T-34s in cover and gone to ground, and said, well, if his tanks want to sit there and shoot me, I'll let him shoot me until I've taken out his artillery, then I'll move forward. And in the second game, the Germans were having too much fun shooting and scooting and staying at range as well. These Stugs that could easily have swept around an open flank, as you'll see, and got rid of the only real threat I had against one of his objectives, with the help of his Fallschirmjäger that were protecting that objective. They could have done that, but it was, oh no, I might lose a Stug, I might take some casualties. You know, you're going to take some casualties, but you're going to lose the game if you just sit there. Obviously I made mistakes as well in the game, and there's things I could have done possibly to win the game, but those are general tactical lessons, whereas I think what I saw in the other games from the German perspective is sort of doctrinal lessons. You've got that great range, but that's only good if you're fighting, if you've got a few things firing at range, yeah, but you've got to fight the battle where the objectives are. As a defender especially, you have to make sure you push your opponent away from that objective from turn 6 onwards. And don't forget, you may feel as though you're the defender in certain missions, but you're not going to win it unless you go and take the objectives that you've deployed yourself. Right? So always read the missions, always understand what it's all about. Basically, what are the objectives and where are they? You know, even if you feel as though you're defending, you have to have a counter-attack up your sleeve, even if it's only to push the attacker back just for that critical turn. In the same way as an attacker just has to push the defender back for that one critical turn, the defender's got to do the same. So you have to be able to counter-attack. So, as I said, I didn't get the first game recorded, which was a great pity, especially because of the way it ended. But really sort of illustrate how you can put pressure on an objective in one turn. But I've got the whole of the second game. I'll take you through it, and then we'll talk about it at the end, and we'll say what I could have done better, which is probably just charge, right? And go over again the opportunities that the Germans may have had too. Right guys, let's get started. So you can see the deployment zone here. The mission is outflanked, as I'm asking Peter there. You can see the German position there. There's some Stu-42s behind the houses in the centre, Hummels, an open objective, which should have been my main focus, platoon of Fallschirmjäger on the other objective. And off table there is another platoon of Fallschirmjäger, a platoon of 4 Stugs, and a company command platoon of 2 Stugs. And you can see me here, I've got a platoon of T-34s, platoon of 6 medium mortars, an infantry platoon, company command, plus 4 more T-34s, and out in the flank 4 T-34s, 5 T-70s, and my anti-tank guns. It really should have been in the middle of the table, to be honest. And you can also see my heavy mortars hiding behind that hill there. That's a big open objective. I've got my 2 ranged in markers on it, waiting for reserves to arrive. I maybe could have put both my infantry platoons there and charged, but you know, I like to play about, as you probably figured out watching games that I've played. So let's go over to turn 1. You can see my infantry. I've advanced towards the church. Tanks flying round the sides. Keep pressure on 2 objectives. Anti-tank guns wondering what the hell they're going to be doing. Then infantry have moved up there. These guys passed to follow me, the other guys didn't. Even then, I'm probably still not moving as fast as I'd like. I'm kind of stuck behind a wood there at the moment. You can see there's not a lot of space to move through. You can see a Stu-42 there, so how do we go at that? At the moment, the Germans are waiting to see whether they can put an artillery barrage down on me. I didn't fire any artillery. I wanted to keep the ranged in markers where they were. There wasn't a great deal of targets, and I thought if anything moves up into the open there, or pops an ambush there or such likes, then they're on a sticky wicket straight away. And so the end of the German firing. The Hummels ranged in on the infantry in front of the red. Wait a minute. There we go. The red roofed houses there killed the base. The Stu-42 bailed a T-34-85. And that was pretty much it for the Germans. Right, so in this turn, I've moved up in force with my tanks. One got stuck behind the wood. I've moved into the buildings with my infantry, so I've got line of sight on that objective. I'm ready to move forward depending on what happens next. The infantry here are moving up through the church into those buildings, so that I'm threatening the other objective. Keep both of them under pressure and make the Germans choose where the reserves are going to go. In this mission, the reserves come right in that bottom corner. That you can see right in the corner there where Peter's deploying his ambush actually, and so the reserves are right in the action straight away. Makes it quite challenging for an attacker, but they haven't been getting any reserves. Didn't get reserves first turn anyway. So at the end of German firing, the Pak-40s killed 2 T-34s, which isn't surprising. The Stus managed to bail out another T-34. The company commander's backed off. He's worried about the proximity of my infantry, and he was wise to do so, because he was calling in the artillery really effectively. The infantry in the house are in a position to start shooting at the Pak-40s, but I've got to decide what I'm going to do with those Pak-40s looking at my remaining tanks, and I've lost 2 important tanks straight away, so I just back off. The infantry keep moving up. Tanks and T-70s are positioning, machine gunning the Fallschirmjäger, and one of my T-34-85s managed to get a shot straight up there, knocked out one of the Stus. I thought that was a sign of good things to come, but nope, it wasn't. The mortars ranged in, heavy mortars ranged in on the Paks, did nothing, and the casualty was actually caused by a heavy machine gun shot, believe it or not. But the light mortars couldn't range in, and that's a familiar story, I'm afraid. Yeah, Dice Rage. So the Germans got 2 reserves. You can see a Fallschirmjäger platoon moving up into the wood, keeping away from that ranged in template, and 4 Stugs. So the Stugs managed to bail out a T-70. The Pak-40s killed, then bailed out T-34 sitting in the woods, and the Hummels ranged in and did a bit of damage on those infantry in the house. I'm kind of moved out of that house, well, moved backwards and forwards with a view to attacking the company command. That was my plan. Over here you can see the T-34s on the right moved out of sight. This is where I failed my assault, by the way, into that house. That's where the company command was. I tried a small assault, but there was too much counter fire. T-34s moved out of the way now. I don't want to put them in trouble's way at the moment. The T-70s kept pressure on the objective, and the guns have decided, well, we might as well move up. These are just hanging about at the back, waiting for a chance. But if only I could kill those Pak-40s, and it just didn't seem to be on. Now you can see the Stugs are another. I think it's a company HQ of Stugs have arrived, and the artillery, the Hummels, have switched to the further forward platoon. The Stugs are kind of moving about a wee bit, but hanging back. They're not pushing out to see if they can engage with myself. And then in my turn, I pulled my infantry back from that forward position. They weren't really strong enough to go forward, but it's an important bit. The T-70 is moving forward to within 8 inches of the objective. The anti-tank guns are starting to get range on the Stugs. I managed to kill a mortar. Holy smoke. I got my second platoon in, ranged in as well. Not kill a mortar, kill a Pak-40 with my mortars even. But it took all day to do that. So on the Germans' turn, the Pak-40 ran away. So they moved a couple of Stugs around the back of the table to try and protect that flank. The other Stugs are kind of moving up and down that road, try to get shots here and there on occasional T70 or infantry platoon. And meanwhile, the Stugs are still dropping quite an effective barrage down on my infantry and forcing me to move further to the left. Didn't range in with my mortars on the Fallschirmjäger in the woods at all. My T-34s, you can see on the left, if we go back over there they go, they've moved up onto the hill to shoot at the Stugs. And the T-70s are still keeping me in the game, whilst my infantry wonder what the hell they're going to do, because wherever they go they get ranged in straight away and my artillery does nothing. Really frustrating. So the Stugs are doing the wee dance again. They managed to bail out a T-70, and that was about it really. The artillery, however, keeps coming down and killing the base here and there of my infantry and whittling them down. But the Germans are still fairly inactive at this point. The Fallschirmjägers are dug in the wood, but otherwise he's not really doing anything significant. And this turn I actually managed to range in with my mortars. Who'd have believed it? And killed a couple of bases. He actually had a bit of bad luck. Otherwise, nothing really happened. My infantry have decided to give up on the house. They're just getting killed, and they've backed off. The guns are up in a bit more numbers, but it's a long way to shoot. They need 60s to hit the Germans at that distance, so they're not going to be doing a lot of damage. They should have been in the middle, pointing up that road, at least to split the table in two a bit. And then, you can see there, the Germans have been doing their shooting and scooting. Still doing nothing about those T-70s that are keeping them in the game. The hill, however, that was a bit unfortunate. Got a bailed out T-34 from a Hummel, and then a Stug bailed another one and killed another one. It was really good shooting for the Germans. So that went well for them. But meanwhile, they're still not doing anything to win the game. Those guys are still keeping me in the game. And then this here, I think we actually decided to call it at this point. It was time to pack up, and you can see consideration given to what they could have done to win the game if the Stugs had come out with those infantry doing an assault as well. They had a Schreck and a Faust. They could have done quite a bit of damage to those light tanks. And as it was, I've got a few casualties on my side, especially in one infantry platoon took a bit of a beating. The Germans had almost no casualties. One platoon. I think the Germans actually lost more platoons than the Soviets did, for what that's worth. But you can have a look at the terrain there as well, guys. You can see it's like a solid wall, absolute solid wall. And even around the other side, there was very little spaces, hardly any gaps to move through them. The roads were cratered. So there you go, guys. That's that. So there you go, folks. As it was a draw. Now, I don't think I lost any platoons. You can look yourself, tell me if I did. I don't think the Germans lost any platoons. Part of the reason for that was because I felt as though I was forced into a very static position, because I'd never made progress with my mortars and such like. If I'd have killed those Pak-40s, I could have moved my tanks in. But secondly, there was the terrain. It was an absolute wall of houses. Even when there was a street going up the house, it was full of craters, so it was going to be cross checks. On the far side, there was a little channel you could get through without a cross check. The other side of the wood, on the far side, you couldn't get through there with a tank without a cross check. The open side only opened up for a wee bit, and then it was a wooden buildings, so it was just a massive lump. So I couldn't get any line of sight, I couldn't concentrate, I would have to just filter things through. So that's kind of why I went on the defensive and hoped to wear them down quickly with the artillery to be able to move in, but it never happened. One thing I should have done that I didn't do, and it's one reason why I actually bring these in the lists, is when you're up against a mission with ambushes, little tanks like these should get put up in front of the big tanks to take the flak, go in and take the pain on their behalf and deny ambush positions to the defender. That's a very useful thing that I find. Imagine there's a wood and you want to approach that wood to cover your advance, but you're worried that you could pop a tank ambush in there. You can put these things up front, and if he wastes his anti-tank guns killing these, then it's not such a big deal. And with regards to anti-tank guns, you notice that I pulled back when they appeared, and if you're mobile and you've got tanks and your anti-tank guns, your opposition can't move, then it's, unless you've got overwhelming fire support for them, the best thing to do is just to go away, and that's them stuck in that corner. Because you notice after I pulled out, the only thing they could really have a go at was the bailed out T-34. I was then able to concentrate my artillery on them, sort of. If that had worked even moderately well, they'd have been gone in quick time, and then I could have got like an outflanking position. I could have been potentially bringing T-34s around one side, around another side. But anyway, you don't have to sit in front of tank guns if they've popped an ambush on you. You can move away. You are tanks. They're mobile. Tanks are mobile, and the tank guns are not. And another thing, I'm just glad there was no minefields in that mission. I wouldn't have been able, there'd have been no way to move at all. And here's a little idea for you guys. Minefields. I use mouse mats. I took a picture of one of my hills and sent it off to one of these eBay mouse mat services, where normally you would put a picture of your family on a mouse mat, or something else perhaps more valuable to you, like a hill. But these are really good because they can sit, they're uneven, they can sit on hills, over terrain or whatever. They're not brittle like you see CDs are or such likes. So you just have to carefully cut them into circles. So that's what I use for minefields. So I could have been more aggressive right at the start and flung my infantry straight over. I should have at least done that and to kill his company command, to reduce his ability to call in artillery. But you know, if I charged towards that objective, I didn't know when his reserves were coming in. They could easily have counter-attacked with 3 Stugs, with another platoon of 4 Stugs coming straight at me. Hundreds and hundreds of MG shots peppering away at me, and without ability for me to really get my tanks through in numbers, especially with anti-tank guns still being alive. So I just sat it out hoping to wear them down. Didn't happen. As far as the Germans are concerned, they only really had to do one thing after successfully holding on, and that was to push me back. But the Stugs were just fascinated with shooting scooting, you know. Blitz, shoot and scoot, blitz, shoot and scoot. Germans are good at that. Let's keep doing that. Keep myself safe, but you just got to do it for one turn. You just have to position yourself so you can move out, do the damage, and then force the enemy back. Even if that leaves you hanging there in danger at the end of the turn, as long as you've done it. You know, your opponent doesn't start their turn within 8 inches off the objective. So always bear that in mind. That's an important thing, is understand the victory conditions and prepare a counter-attack. Always have a counter-attack in mind. How can I put it in? Where is my opponent? Where are they at in terms of the objective? In this case I was clearly threatening one but not the other, so they could just focus on pushing me away from that one. But there you go, guys. It takes 2, as I said. Both players have to do something in a game if they're going to win it. It's great to shoot at tanks and kill tanks and push tanks around and things, but you want the satisfaction as well of being able to claim the victory, because to be honest, in both games hardly anything actually got knocked out. We both, as I said, could have done things better in the games, but the opportunities were there for the defender to win it. And I think, you know, you'll see at the end of the clip, you can see Brian and Peter, who were playing together, by the way, roughly 50 points each. Instead of 100, I added a couple of heavy machine guns into my units to make up to 104 it was, because somebody pulled out. But you know, you seen him at the end going, oh right, okay, so we could have moved through the wood, you know. In that respect as well, one thing that I would recommend to defenders, right, is your infantry, when you're defending an objective, don't defend a line across the front of the objective. Defend it well in advance of the objective. So somebody's not going to be able to easily be within 8 inches of that objective without taking you on. No, they can't just sit there as I was doing. Defend in front of an objective, and where terrain allows as well. If there's some games where the deployment zone, the objective is right up against the front of it. That's always a good place to put an objective if you're an attacker, because your defender can't be in front of it. But if terrain allows it, as a defender, you might want to risk moving forward and then try to dig in front of the objective. Could be too risky, but that way somebody can't just sit there within 8 inches, without you being able to instantly interfere with that or block it. So that's a consideration you might want to take on board for defender as well. But there you go, folks. That's first outing for Soviets for me in version 4. I really want to see whatever the Soviet books look like, book or books, I don't know, to get more options in there. But there's quite a lot of challenges in the meantime. For instance, range 28 for the 85, range 24 for the 76s. It's hard to use them in an effective way together. If you are going to put a platoon together like this, make the 76mm your command tank for the specific purposes of chaining. If you need to get your 85s into position to fire, you may be looking around terrain or such like, and you've got to have one tank which is out of line of sight because of that, it can't shoot anything, or it's out of range, make it the 76mm. Everything else is going to shoot at the 85mm anyway. But there you go. Quite enjoyed the Soviets, quite enjoyed the games despite of the way they ended up, and if I wasn't cursing my dice, I maybe would have been able to report on 2 victories. But there you go. Well done to Brian and Peter for holding on. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, Dice Rage!